187.5 kilometres today with 3 climbs, all in the second half of the race, and they arrive in ascending order of difficulty, culminating with the first category Monte de la Combe de Lézier-les-Moulins. That peaks at 1,200 metres with 12 kilometres still to ride along a rolling plateau to the finish, and it might be what discourages attacks from Chris Froome's challengers, but who knows? Here's a recap of who's done what so far. Richie Porte briefly showed intent on the Stage 3 uphill finish, then tried to out-sky Sky, putting his BMC team on the front to the foot of La Planche des Belles Filles, where he ultimately lost the 4-second third-place bonus to Chris Froome. Fabio Aru perhaps benefited from the big two focusing on each other to get away for the win on Stage 5, and now looms larger in Froome's rearview mirror as a result. Astana, though, looked less of a twin threat than they did coming into the race. Jakob Fuglsang lost over a minute to his teammate on Stage 5. Now 1:33 behind Froome, he might be the man they send out first to start things off. Alberto Contador said he was saving his strength and rationing his effort in the races leading up to the Tour. So far, rationing still seems to be in effect. Until he puts in a strong attack, the suspicion will grow that he doesn't have one in him. Nairo Quintana lost slightly more time to Froome than Contador did on La Planche des Belles Filles, but the bigger climbs he prefers are yet to come. The jury's still out on the wisdom of riding both the Giro and the Tour. Romain Bardet has been quietly in touch so far, and this year's route favours his willingness to take risks and attack from distance. Simon Yates has the white jersey to defend. He attacked too on La Planche des Belles Filles and looks full of intent. Dan Martin was the only man making any ground on Fabio Aru in the closing kilometres of Stage 5. He's a rider we can rely on to animate the race almost regardless of what it might ultimately cost him. 193 men still in the race as it rolled out of Dole, at the birthplace of Louis Pasteur, and on its way out it rolled past him, or at least his statue.
So 15 kilometres to go for the finish line. And that is what faces Lilian Kalmtjern if he looks forward. If he looks backwards, he'll see the 31-year-old Dutchman, Robert Hessink, trying to close the gap to him. But at the moment, he's made no impact on the advantage at all that the young Frenchman has over the rest of the Tour de France. So he's got a real chance here, Kalmtjern, and not too much of this climb still to go. Remember, the 15 kilometres to go sign was not to the top of the climb, it was to the finish line. They pass through the top of the climb with 12 kilometres still to go, so he's only actually got 3k to go of the categorised climb.
Barguil, he's going to be disappointed. He was so strong. It's one of these days where I think he was too strong and underestimated slightly what the day was going to be like. Look, it's still static, the gap between these two riders, between Kalmtjern and Hessink.
11 seconds.
It's it really is a battle royale now between these two.
Right, here's this left turn coming up. Any second now, Kalmtjern will take this left turn, and then Hessink will 11 seconds later. It doesn't sound like much, does it? 11 seconds.
But after a day like today, I mean, you can see it's just, and this, I think most cyclists have been in that position where you've got a rider in front of you, you just can't close the gap, and that's what's happened to Hessink right now.
Here we are. So it's a long straight section initially, and it's all wooded, and that is the road that will guide them up to the top.
The thing is, Kalmtjern, and we've seen over the last few days, when he hits the flat, he's an amazing rider on the flat as well, perhaps more so than Robert Hessink, hence why he knows if he can just hold him off, and he's still looking in control, if he can hold him off, then he can really pile on the pressure. And he'll be encouraged to see that the peloton is holding a controlling pace. They're not coming back at him yet, so he doesn't have to worry about that or be overly concerned about that race that's going on with the GC, because if he can get to the top of here like this, it's highly likely he can make it to the finish. His only competition right now is Robert Hessink, who is right there, right behind there. Every time he looks over his shoulder, he can see him.
1.8k to go for Kalmtjern and 1.9k or thereabouts to go for Robert Hessink, because he's about 100 metres further down the road, maybe a little bit more. 11 seconds, the gap between Lilian Kalmtjern and Robert Hessink. Then it's 40 seconds back from Kalmtjern to Nicolas Roche and Serge Pauwels, who are riding together in a group. Brice Fayou is not really going terribly far at all. He's about 20 seconds or 25 seconds in front of this GC group with Contador, with Dan Martin. First little glimpse of him in the blue jersey, alongside or just in front of the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. Nairo Quintana's there. Romain Bardet has still got Pierre Latour working with him. The polka dot jersey of Fabio Aru and Richie Porte, they're all there, the top 10 in the general classification. No one has suffered today. Just one little scare for Chris Froome when he rolled off the road and into the gravel by the side of it, but he didn't come off his bike, he got back on, and there he is, and that battle has yet to kick off, if it's going to kick off at all.
But at the moment for Calmjan, who we see here, and are we going to get a glimpse of Hessing just coming around the corner behind?
I think it's gone out, that advantage, doesn't it? It looks like it's he's stretched it out.
11 says static still. Now look, Calmjan's...
Finally, it's beginning to hurt Lilian Calmjan. That's kind of almost a relief.
Yeah, 1K still to go. It's going to be a long, long kilometre for him. But he knows the fact that time gap is remaining static. He knows that Robert Hessing's in as much trouble as him. This really is just... they're just racing against each other.
Some really horrible road surface here as well. It's almost like riding with the handbrake on. Just unpleasant. There's Hessing, who, even when he's going well, looks uncomfortable. But yeah, Calmjan's in a smooth exterior, slightly ruffled man.
Now, Hessing does have an ability, a bit like Dan Martin, to go into the red kind of for a very brief period of time. He used to be great in the Ardennes. He could get to 500 metres to go and then just go do a huge sprint to try and get himself as close as he can. I wouldn't put it past him, sort of thing to do. You can see a bit further down the road. There's the two other riders who are there. One of I think it's Nicholas Roche.
Roche and Powell's,
Powell's just sitting there. They're essentially out of this race now.
Yeah. I tell you what, David, this is also one of those irritating climbs where they've put the King of the Mountains arch and the finish line for the KOM coming up, actually. It's not too far, just around the corner. But then the road continues just gently to rise. It's a false flat after that, and they don't start descending for a good, 800 metres, kilometre after that, sadistically. He's only got 400 metres, according to the graphic.
18 seconds, 20 seconds, so he is bringing time out. So he has, he's cracked Hessing.
Yeah. Nicholas Roche and Serge Powell's, as you say, are out of it, and they're just hanging on to a battle for third place at the moment, but even that might not last too much longer. The Brice Fayou group is only 20 seconds odd behind them.
So
the size of this group hasn't changed much on this climb.
No, there's just occasional riders getting blown out, but this is, if you're here now, it's unlikely you'll get dropped, so that's the hardest part is done. And obviously Team Sky, as I said, are riding a controlling race rather than an aggressive race. I think they'll be very happy to get today done with after that's been pretty frantic by any standards.
Well, weirdly, the real attacking in this race, apart from this obviously this brutal battle that these two are engaged in, seemed to happen at the beginning. And the closer we've got to the finish line, at this point at least, the more neutralised it's got in some way.
Well, that's often happens. I mean, it's just been because that's got a lot to do with the fact that they've just all basically punched each other's faces in to the point where they're all laying on the floor trying to just like clamber back up. And it's very much it's been that sort of day where it's been a smash fest. And so, you know, it's the fact that Lilian Calmjan is still able to do this is a remarkable ride, and you consider he's quite a young rider, and the fact he's been winning races since early February. So it's and we've seen him in the last couple of days.
So he takes 10 points in the King of the Mountains competition, but that is of secondary concern for Lilian Calmjan, as
Valgren's been caught.
Valgren is being caught. I wondered whether that was an attack from the peloton, but it wasn't. Michael Valgren is the next rider to be swept up by the Sky train. Hessing, that's over 11 seconds now, isn't it? It's more like 20, possibly even 30 seconds before Hessing will get over that climb in second place, and he'll pick up 8 points. 12k to go from the top of the climb, which isn't the top of the climb, as you can see. Hessing is continuing to climb. And now, still doing his shift on the front. Nieve yet to take over right at the front of the Sky train. Valgren back in the folds. Contador looking like he wants to do something.
They're accelerating slightly, Team Sky, just to make sure they hold their place in the front. More for safety than anything else, so they can control the speed and the descent, etc. Although there's not much descent off this, it's going to be dropped down a little bit, but then it's rolling roads to the finish. With what is it? With 5.5K? So, yeah, the 6% climb, so that could be a good one. Fingers crossed we'll see a little attack there.
So 2 Spaniards and a Colombian from Team Sky, and from Trek Segafredo, lead an Irishman and a Briton in the GC field over the top of the climb. Brice Fayou is about to be caught. So here we go then, settling into his climbing rhythm once again. Out of the saddle he goes, and Lilian Calmjan really has to attack these next 1.52 kilometres of climbing. And if he does that on the newly resurfaced road here, it does get a bit steeper, significantly steeper through 4 kilometres to go, and then it flattens out, and then there's a gentle false flat, and then it does drop in towards the finishing line. He's very, very close to sealing this victory now, and he'll begin to know it. And I'm sure Jean-René Bernadotte will be telling him in that earpiece all about his chances.
There you go, 37 seconds to Hessing, so that's over. He's not going to be able to get back, but it's still 37 seconds. If he does puncture or something, then that does still mean that Hessing goes back. You'd want to have over a minute to be safe from a mechanical or something such thing, but luckily it looks like with the resurfaced road and the fact it's a Tour de France, where they do clean a lot of the final roads, he's probably pretty safe in that area. And Hessing's he is just still there, so that's going to weigh on his mind, but he'll be getting time checks through his radio, and he'll know that gap's constantly going up. And the fact that it's constantly going up does mean...
Cramp. Cramp for Lilian Calmjan.
There you
Gets
go.
a little supporting pat on the buttocks from a member of the public from the side of the road, but that is screamingly painful now for Lilian Calmjan, and it looks like his speed's just been scrubbed off.
Yeah, completely. That's what we were saying. Just needs something. That wasn't a puncture, but it's got cramp. So 37 seconds. And now on the radio, Hessing's going to be getting that told him. He's cramping up ahead. He's cramping up ahead, so he'll get a new motivation. Oh, he can barely pedal.
His legs have stopped working. That's where Hessing is. It's still 30 seconds down, and Hessing doesn't exactly look fresh, does he? But that's Hessing style, as we've already indicated.
Oh, this is...
Can you recover from this? How do you... What happens when you cramp up? Have you ever experienced that, David?
Yeah, I have, and it's normally doesn't come on quite that seriously all at once. I mean, kind of, he'd have been feeling it coming on the penultimate climb. But yeah, it seems to have hit him pretty hard there. But he's got it back again. You don't ride it out. It's just he needs to get the blood flowing through again to clear out the lactic acid. But it goes to show how deep he's gone.
The wise thing to do, perhaps at this point, David, is to maybe, at the expense of scrubbing off a bit of speed, drop down to a lower gear and spin the legs a little bit faster, even if it's
that's what he's doing now, it appears to be, because he does ride quite a big gear. Let's drop down, or just get off and have a stretch. That's what I thought he was going to do there. That's why I stopped talking. I was like, oh no, don't get off.
All right, the reason we haven't seen the yellow jersey group, and French TV has been ignoring it, is twofold. One is a Frenchman is about to win a stage of the Tour de France, so that's understandable from France Télévision's point of view, but also, obviously, they haven't attacked each other, and they're not going to. There'll be a little sprint amongst them, won't there, where Dan Martin might try and nick a second or two, or Simon Yates, you never know, or even Chris Froome. Who knows? One of them will have a little go, but the GC race hasn't happened today. Brice Feilloux is trying to hunt down a third-place finish if he possibly can. He'll have to get past Roach and Powells if he hasn't done that already. We haven't seen that catch, but it's possible that Brice Feilloux is the third rider on the road. No doubt about who's in the lead, though, and that little nasty climb is done and dealt with. It's one thing to win a stage on the Vuelta, but it's another thing if you're French and you ride for a French team to win a stage on the Tour de France. Surely he was going to do it at some point in his career, but it might have come a year or two sooner than we might have guessed. Lilian Calmjan surely is going to ride this one out. And if he can hold his form, and it seems like he's dispensed with that cramp, and he's riding okay again now, will surely hold off the Dutchman. But he hasn't given up, Robert Hessing, and he's not going to. And second place on the Tour de France isn't bad, even though he'll be disappointed. But you can see Calmjan passed through 3 kilometres to go some 20, 30 seconds ago, so he's... Try as he might, Robert Hessing, and he's a brilliant rider. He's made absolutely no impact on Calmjan's lead. Not at any one moment, even when Calmjan was cramping up and virtually coming to a standstill, did it look like Hessing would actually draw this lead back. And Calmjan is going to win stage 8.
You just worry. Oh, there's a little attack, so Simon Yates is up there. Thought he might do that.
Yeah.
It's Latour, I think, Pierre Latour.
Absolutely, it's Pierre Latour, that muscular sprinting style of his. Simon Yates in the white jersey, and closed down, shut down by Team Sky's Domestiques pretty quickly, but early indications that there is a little bit of intent in that yellow jersey group, just to score a psychological point or two, make a point or two, and maybe nick a second or two. The Vauclair tongue, where did he learn that from? The old maestro may be riding his last Tour de France, but the heir apparent is on his team, Lilian Calmjan, doing what only Vauclair does up till now. So, the king is dead, long live the king. Direct Energie may have been looking to Thomas Vauclair to give them success, or a taste of success, on this edition of the Tour de France. They left Brian Coquard, their dedicated, designated sprinter. They dropped him, and there is an attack off the front of the yellow jersey group, and as you predicted, it's Dan Martin who's on the move.
Yeah, Dan Martin's a perfect finish for him. He's so explosive. There's not many climbers who can sprint, and there's Betancourt and Pierre Rolland there as well. So Brice Fillou, they just bridged up to Tony Galopin, Dan Martin, Betancourt, and I mean that's a pretty champion group, but it's going to be hard for him to get away.
Just a chance Dan Martin could finish third on the stage, and if he does that, he'll take 4 seconds time bonus as well as whatever gap he has on the road as well. So watch that subplot. But for the time being, all the cameras are focusing, or they should be at least from a French perspective, on Lilian Calmejane. So now Dan Martin is round Serge Pauwels, and I would think Nico Roche. So I think on the road Dan Martin is in third place at the moment.
And it was interesting, it's Geraint Thomas that is responsible for closing things down, which is what we had presumed they'd use Geraint from top 4 on this run-in, because it's perfectly suited to his style of racing.
Well, 7 years ago, the Tour de France came to Station des Rousses, and on that occasion there was another French victor on the same team as Lilian Calmejane. On that occasion, sylvain Chavanel, now 38 years of age, took the victory on the Station des Rousses. This time, though, a man who is 14 years younger than him, Lilian Calmejane, already a stage victor in his young career on the Vuelta, takes the biggest win in his young career for Direct Energie, for France, in some style. Remember the name? Lilian Calmejane. Many people predicted he'd come to the 2017 Tour de France and take a win. This is confirmation of a rare and special talent. Bardet, Pinot, Latour, Barguil, Alaphilippe. France has a lot to look forward to. Add one more name to the list. Lilian Calmejane takes the win on stage 8 at Station des Rousses, and he wins handsomely. Further back down the road, though, Robert Hessink has not given up, and he is going to take another second place on a Grand Tour stage for the Dutchman. Hugely popular character, abandoning his previous incarnation as a GC hope for the Netherlands. Leave that to Kruijswijk and Dumoulin. This man is a stage win hunter, and believe you me, this second place will only have inspired him to greater things. He will be on the attack again and again on this edition of the Tour de France, proving that the form he had at the Vuelta when he rode to a first place and a second place is still very much there. Hessink is in the Tour de France, and he picks up a very good second place. Meanwhile, Calmejane rests those cramping legs, and he is hauled to the front. There is a little sprint for third place. A Wanty Group Quebec rider takes it. Nico Roche is still just about going to hold on to fourth as he almost picked at the line. Fabio Aru was attacking as well, but all the GC favourites come in with the yellow jersey. Chris Froome hangs on to the race lead comfortably in the end, and since not very much happened in the general classification, tomorrow's headlines are all going to be about one man, Lilian Calmejane.
And quite rightly, 37 joyful yet cramp-filled seconds Lilian Calmejane had over Robert Hessink on the line. Guillaume Martin led home the favourites group, although Fabio Aru was the only favourite in the first 10 riders, along with the likes of Nicolas Roche. Dan Martin was next of the contenders, but as I say, all the big names finished on the same time, 50 seconds behind the winner. Geraint Thomas was a faller on this corner, although we didn't actually see him go down, just off the road and out of frame. Daniel Friebe went to check on him.
Geraint, we can see your left leg is bleeding there. Just tell us what happened.
I'd just gone back for bottles, and I just got back to the front asking the boys if they wanted one, and just went into the corner a bit too hot. And yeah, I was just sort of looking to my side, and the boys obviously started braking. I was just a split second late and just yeah, hit the gravel, and then it was kind of like go down into the trees or hit the hay bale. So I chose the hay bale, and front flipped, but yeah, it was fine. I think it was a better option than down in the woods.
You've had some pretty nasty crashes in major tours. This injury presumably is not going to affect you in the next few days?
No, not at all. It's only, I took the scab off where I crashed the other day, so it just looks worse than what it is, and yeah, lucky really.
Steve Cummings surfs the chaos of a stage like today's as well as anyone, but when the churning finally stopped, he wasn't with the front runners.
Steve, you said it was going to be hard, you said it was going to be unpredictable, and so it proved.
Yeah, I tried. It was really the start I wished for. It was really hard. I tried several times, but it became a bit like a war of attrition, you know, and in the end I didn't have the legs to keep going, and that's when the break went, and I did my best.
Now, unspotted, which is to say unspotted by us, Lilian Calmejane started the day with a single point in the King of the Mountains competition, and that meant that as well as taking the stage win, he took the polka dot jersey from Fabio Aru. And he had time to make both podium visits and get back to the team bus before the French champion came in. Arnaud Démare was well down, 37 minutes 33, but well inside the time limit. The last remaining Sagan in the race, Peter's older brother Juraj, was last and on his own except for the broom wagon behind him. He was at 40 minutes 30. Simon Yates kept the white jersey, which was under threat for a while with Pierre Latour in the large break. And Chris Froome kept yellow, although it was the early and relentless attacking from the field in general that made his day stressful, rather than anything direct from his closest rivals. And the end result of the day's madness was absolutely nothing as far as the top of the classification was concerned. Positions and time gaps from Froome down to Rafa Majka in 10th untouched.
The first of back-to-back tricky, difficult stages out of the way. You certainly kept the pace high.
Certainly, I think that was a much harder day than a lot of people expected. I think tactically it was quite an interesting day, obviously with a lot of the GC guys who weren't too far off, sort of minute and a half, 2 minutes, who were right up there. Meant that we had to ride quite a fast tempo behind, and it was a really selective day. And I mean, I can only just say thanks to my teammates for the work they did today, and it's thanks to them that I've still got the jersey.
And Chris, tomorrow you'll smash it all to pieces.
I wish it was that easy.